is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hi, Gabe. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Hall. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Yeah, enjoyed your presentation at Keiretsu the other day.
Thank you. It really enjoyed all the feedback, and it's a wonderful process, and really appreciate all the dialogue I've had with folks.
That's great. That's great. Good to hear and so forth. And looking forward to catching up. How many goal sheets did you get out of it?
So between the two, I've got 35 gold sheets out of the two because I did the Mid-Atlantic and then the Southeast. So great feedback. And that's another part of the process that's wonderful because a lot of times you present and you don't really understand from the investor's point of view, what are they looking for? What's their issues? And again, the process does a great job telling you exactly where you stand, what's good, and where the real questions are.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, good, good. Well, did you want to talk about Keiretsu or do you want to talk about 10 Capital today?
Probably Keiretsu. So what I wanted to get a feedback from you, first of all, appreciate your feedback during our forum presentation. And, I wanted to just answer any questions that you may have based on, the presentation, the investment opportunity, because really what I'm looking to understand is interest from various folks with respect to participating in due diligence or making investments. So would love to understand any questions that you may have that I could answer for you.
Sure. I was looking to learn more about the dollars that went into the system, how much people pay for it. There were some recurring elements to it, I thought, and then
Mhm.
didn't know how you were going to navigate the hospital procurement cycle. What does that look like? And have you done that
Sure.
before and have experience with that? That can be a tricky thing.
It is. And so just to step back a little bit, we have a capital component plus a disposable component. And the capital component, we're anticipating it's going to be around $30,000 in capital. So tremendously less than what you would envision typical robotic systems. And then on a disposable perspective, we're looking at about $750 per procedure on a disposable perspective. And those would be the things that would be in sterile field that aren't draped. And that's our basic capital plus disposable model. We also are looking at a SaaS per procedure because our capital cost is so relatively low. Another option that I've been successful with Spectranetics, where we had a $400,000 piece of capital with laser atherectomy. We had a volume-based deal where as long as the facility would agree to a certain number of procedures, we could include the cost of the capital at no charge. So we basically have two pricing options based on what the facility's needs are. So we can, if they want to just book capital on their books, we can do that. If they want to keep capital off and do a per procedure, which that one we'd probably think is more like around $1,500 per procedure if there's no capital involved. We can basically be adaptable to what the accounts are looking for and what their needs are. Does that give you a feel for the capital side?
Yeah, no, it gives me a good sense. And it sounds like you got some good options for the hospital to take on. Well, are you finding that the large hospitals want the capital and the smaller ones don't, or vice versa? What do you find out there?
Yeah, that's a great one. Certain institutions, first of all, like let's say you go to a VA system, VAs, they can't do volume-based deals. They want the capital, they want to purchase. When you talk to places like, large GPOs, HCA and the like, their preferences, they just want the lowest cost at the pump as possible. So they're looking to negotiate the capital cost as low as possible and the disposable cost as low as possible. And that's what we find with large GPOs. When we start getting into the community hospitals, I think that's community hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers. I think those are places where they may not have the big capital budgets, and the appeal of a SaaS per procedure model is more appropriate for them. So again, it's as we go into the VAC, we'll have a sense for which needs the hospitals have, where they want to manage costs on their balance sheet. And we really leave it up to them to decide where they want to go.
Right. That makes sense. Now, is this past FDA approval and you're out selling it, or are you just pre-selling it?
No, no, this is pre-selling. So
Okay.
we have on our cap table right now, we have about 14 surgeons that represent a great cross section of different types of hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers. And so with their feedback, with their institutions, they're giving us that smart money feedback in terms of what they think it makes sense for their types of institutions. So we're still in development stage. We're going through the final development and moving into design lock. And then next year, we'll be into verification validation activities with an FDA submission, probably back half of next year.
Okay. And what FDA path is that on?
This is going to be a 510K. So we've already had 2 pre-sub meetings with the FDA to get alignment on what our pathway is. And we've got an identified predicate that we've already got the FDA feedback on. Along with that, they've given us feedback on the testing regimen. So this, as a class 2 510K, there's no clinical studies. There'll be benchtop testing, no animal studies, and we will have cadaver studies. But that's really more for understanding the precision and accuracy measurements and the human factors perspective. But the testing regimen, we've got the ASTM methods identified. We've got our notified body that will certify our testing. So now it's just a matter of, now that we've got concurrence with the FDA, just executing the plan that they've set up for us.
Okay. It sounds like you have some good numbers there, and it sounds like you can work with the hospitals in whatever way they want. Who actually makes the decision? Is it the surgeon, or is it the hospital, or is it both?
Well, as you know the world well, the VAC committee, large cross-functional. I think that for me, the key for a successful VAC is always getting your physician champion, believing in the technology, and having them shepherd through their respective institution, because they know, is this an institution that's finance driven? Is it clinical driven? Is it, how do we avoid complications because there's legal liabilities? So for us, it's a matter of let the champion, physician, surgeon champion, basically modify the sale to the VAC based on what their institution needs are. Given the capital cost, anything below 50,000 from a capital takes you out of the capital appropriation process that you'd have, let's say, with a big Philips C-arm or the big iron type capital. 30,000 is real straightforward. I will never say easy in a VAC, just like no FDA submission is easy, but it's straightforward. And I think the types of things that we would have to produce at that VAC committee meeting, again, it's straightforward.
No, that's great. It sounds like you have a good story there as well. So, no, I think you answered all my questions at this point. And if you have any, I guess you were able to put a diligence team together and you're working your way through that process.
Well, right now we're in the process. So I'm working with Steve, the due diligence director, on getting the team assembled. So we're still in the assembly of the due diligence team. I'll say that. And so if you can think of folks that you think would be great members, I've reached out to basically the majority of the people on the list that have expressed interest. And so we're still assembling that team. It's not in place yet.
Right. Well, one of my coachings is when you go and ask, you want to kind of define the ask, because I've had a lot of people ask me to join the diligence team. And the way it often comes across is, hey, we're going to be doing this diligence process. And when I ask, well, when is it going to start? Well, we don't know. Well, what do you want me to do? Well, we're not sure. Well, how long will it take? Well, we don't know. And
Yeah.
and so it
It's
comes
hard to
across as
commit to
this
that.
very undefined, potentially large commitment I could be making.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of people said no just because it wasn't defined. And so if you go to them and say, hey, I want you to join the diligence team, and it's important for them to be on the team because this is how they learn the deal and get comfortable with it, is reading these documents in preparation for actually making an investment. is to say, I want a half hour of your time once a week for 3 weeks, something like that.
Mhm.
Can you give me half an hour for 3 weeks? Later it can go to 4 or 5, of course. But the idea is you start small and then well defined, very simple. Just read this document, it's one chapter, and give me some feedback. Just write it out on a Word document, your questions and concerns or whatever. And that's it. And then what you'll find is you'll get a lot more people signing up because you define the commitment and they can mentally figure out how it's going to go on their calendar. If you leave it in the amorphous, something's going to happen someday, sometime soon, but we don't know when. People have a hard time figuring out where it's going to go on their calendar. They don't know how much time it's going to go, and so it's harder to sign them up. So try the small baby step. Just give me a couple of hours, and then sometimes they get into it. They really like it. They want, and they're signing up for the next chapter, or they're signing up for the next
Sure.
review. So this process is always a baby stepping process. There's no jumping to the end. It's working through. But anyway, try that. If you don't have luck with that, come back and I'll see if I can help with that front as well. And typically, you get all of them from your goal sheets, except for the IP. They try to get that from a host sponsor that's an attorney that knows the space very well, and they're trying to get a freedom to operate ruling out of it if possible.
Yeah, and actually on the IT side or the IP side, one of my first presentations in the Mid Atlantic group, one of the attorneys that was on, he was like, "I would love to participate on the IP side." So I feel that one we've got that. That's his wheelhouse, and was very supportive of that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I have my meeting with Steve next week because part of this is learning from a Keiretsu standpoint. What are the elements that the Keiretsu team is looking for in the data room? What are the folders? What are the groupings? Because, I've got due diligence with other entities and I know what their data room expectations are. I just need to learn Keiretsu's based on what their unique requirements are. And then I can come back to your point about, okay, here's the bite size. Here's the element that I'd really love your feedback on based on your background.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you got it well in hand then. So it should be hard to get that together as well. So yeah, let me know if you need help with that. But it sounds like you're making good progress on it, and we'll go from there. But appreciate your taking time. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, that's it. Paul, again, just really appreciate the support and feedback and also just thoughts on this call. So I'll reach back out as Steve and I get a better handle on the due diligence and then we'll go from there.
All right, very good. Well, thanks so much for taking time for catching me up. It sounds like things are going well.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Halty Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.